Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're Menachot daf Ayin Gimel. We're going to begin on Ayin Beis Amud Beis by the new Mishnah, new parak. Veil Menachos. These are the following mincha offerings that nikmatzos, that you do kamitza, and v'shirehen l'kohanim, and then the leftover of the flour after you've already been makdir the kamitza, the rest of it is eaten by the kohanim, and we have this lengthy list. Minchas hasoiles, when it comes to mincha of flour, v'hamachmas marchashas, whether it's a big or a small pan, v'chalois v'arkikin, the schal or the wafers, minchas oiv kachavim. Even when it comes to a mincha offering of an oiv kachavim, also that is we do kamitza on that. Minchas nashim, a woman's mincha offering. Minchas ha'omer on Pesach. Minchas chayte. Minchas kanais. So when it comes to the mincha of someone who did a sin, which is referring to they can't afford, so it's an oil of yored, so you end up bringing this, or minchas kanais for a sot. The Shimon omer minchas chayte shel kohanim. When it comes to the minchas chayte that a kohen brings, now normally when a kohen brings, so he doesn't eat the whole. It's kolil, it's completely burnt, and therefore, the whole question: do you do kamitz at all? Maybe you don't do kamitz at all because the whole thing's burnt. So according to Rav Shimon, he holds nikmetzes. Taka is we do kamitza. However, kaimitz karvel atzmo and v'shirayim karvel atzmo. The whole thing is burnt, but they're burned separately. Question 2: Beis mincha mitzinu shenikmetzes v'afil. V'afilu einu nechels, and luckily it says l'chad manderim. Of course, this is the minchas chayte shel kohanim, as the Mishnah already said. So now let's see the Gemara. So Amar Papa, kol heicha d'tanan eser. Many times we've seen this already. When it talks about the 10, so we said that outside of the lechem hapanim and the minchas chavit, in which there's 12, all the other minchas there's 10, similar to like a toda or the nazir, which is 40, is 20. It's all in breaks of 10. So the question is, how do you bring it? Do you bring chalos? Do you bring rakikin or a mixture? So Esther Tanan, my kamashmul afukim Rav Shimon, mechsa chalos or mechsa rakikin yavi kamashmul deloy. That you can't bring 5 and 5, but rather all has to be the same amount. Again, this we've had numerous times. Rashi says over here, they all have to be the same, as opposed to what Rav Shimon says, that he's makshir when it comes to a minchas mafi in 3 different places. Okay. So v'shirehim l'kohanim. So again, in all those examples, the kohanim get to eat the leftovers. Minolan diksiva delu ksiva. So v'zois tares hamincha. So some of them it says that's what the Kohen does, and those that did not actually specifically say it, the pasuk says v'zois tares hamincha hakri v'yis b'nei Aaron v'gaimer v'nesaris mimenu yoichel Aaron uvanav. So it mentions that the leftovers eaten by the Kohanim. So ba'chitin. So when it comes to the mincha flour, lo kimaboilan, it's not a question. Kikimaboilan. So basically the question is, we already have psukim when it comes to the flour offering, the mincha offering of wheat. So he says it's true, but that's not the question. Kikimaboilan bas oirin. So when it comes to barley, for example, the minchas oimer, or let's say the minchas kanais, right, which are made out of barley. So how do we know the kohanim eat that too? So 1 second. So sarinami mid nikmetzes shirul kohanim. Just like everything else, as long as you had to do you had to do a kamitza, so everything's the same, the kohanim get the rest. So leave the rabbanon l'kimaboilan. There's no question. Of course, that's the case. Kikimaboilan Rav Shimon. Yomer ika mincha de mikbetza v'lo misachlana. That there's a time in which you could do kamitza even though the kohanim don't eat. Now Rav Shimon Omer, as our Mishnah said, minchas chayte shel kohanim nikmetzes hakaimitz karvel atzmoi be'atzmo v'shirayim krim be'atzmo. So Minolan, how does he know? In other words, why, according to Rav Shimon, does he hold when it comes to minchas chayte of kohanim, in which it's not going to be eaten anyway? The whole thing is usually burned on the mizbech. How does he know that you still have to do Kamitza there? So the Pasuk says, "V'chol mincha b'lu b'shemen," any mincha which is mixed up with oil, v'charev, or a dry mincha offering, v'chol b'nei Aaron tiyeh. It goes to the Sharaim, go to the Kohanim. So we already know that's the din when it comes to wheat. So to in lebul shel sayrit. So we're going to buy barley. When it comes to being dry, so therefore to in l'charav shel sayrit. We're taught of wheat. We already know wheat, so instead we'll use barley. So you tell me that's what the pasuk is coming to tell you. So we have this very lengthy brisa that says that Kohanim can't exchange one for the other. If one has a mincha offering, you can't exchange it to another kohen for his zevach. So how do we know that? As we continue to Ein Gimel Madalf, Talmud Leimer, the Chol HaMincha Asher Tiyafi Batanur, any mincha which is baked in an oven, the Chol B'nei Aaron Tiyeh, it goes to the Kohanim. Ish Ka'achiv, a man to his brother. So Yachol Lo Yachol Menachos Keneged Zvachim. You can understand these are two totally separate things, a mincha and an actual animal. Shlo Komu Tachteim Bedalos, because there's nothing that goes under that Bedalos with regard to poverty. Yachol Menachos Keneged Oifos. But however, mincha maybe could be kenegen of shahari kamu tachtem bedalos. So says Rashi, she'in mavi mincha, you only bring a mincha el bedali dalos, which means you're really poor. You can't bring a behema, you can't bring an oaf, so you bring a mincha. Shnemer im lo simsa yadai, fine. So, however, in this case, shahari kamu tachtem bedalos shemechayuvin kinim ve'enu yachol havi mincha. So if let's say you're chayav to bring a bird, you can bring a mincha. So those are a little bit closer as opposed to this huge jump from a behema to mincha. So maybe an oaf to a mincha is allowed to be switched. So yachol menachas kamachim. So you would think maybe birds to flour, because one is a blood offering, right? Obviously, there's blood and a knife, and we do the zrika sadam, not mincha. Therefore they're two separate things. However, maybe yachal oifas keneged zvachim, birds to animals shahalol v'halol mini damim. They're both blood. Talmud leimer v'al machvas l'chol b'nei Aaron tiyeh. It has to go specifically to that person. Yachol oifas keneged zvachim shalo asiyasim biad v'halol asiyasim kli. When it comes to a behema, the way that you kill the animal is through shchita with a knife, as opposed to when it comes to oifos, it's with your finger. It's through malika. So maybe they're not the same in that way. Maybe if it's the exact same thing, one's a mincha, another mincha, maybe you can exchange it. So maybe we're talking about two different types of offerings. However, that's only because one is a deep pot, and one's a thin pan. So therefore, it produces different qualities of flour. If it's mamash the same, maybe you could exchange. Maybe that's only we're dealing with kadashim, the highest levels of kedusha of yachol b'kadashim kalim. When it comes to other karbanos like a shlamim, bechor, meiser, pesach, so maybe you could exchange those. Ish kachiv. The al taida kishem she'in a taida is of course a kadashim kalim. Kishem she'in chalkim b'kadashim kadashim kachin chalkim b'kadashim kalim. Ish chaylek. It says that an individual can divide. Even if he has a blemish, nonetheless he can still participate. However, if this kayin is a kid, so then he's not allowed to do it, but of course he could eat the chelk with his father. Anyway, the whole question is, we learn out this whole drasha to teach us this din. So how could we say that Rav Shimon learns out the din of doing the kamitza for a minchas chayte of a kohen from this pasuk? So who makoil nafka? Actually, we're not two separate things because they don't come from the same pasuk. I thought we already used that word, says Rashi, La'el in Perikol Menachos on Daf Samach Gimel, with Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda the Amr Ma Koil Ha'amr Lamata Shnei Minin. Okay, so Ella Hahu Miva Koil. So again, you can learn out from another aspect of the pasuk, and that's what we can learn from it. So Ravina Omer Asim Rab Levi, the Tanu Levi. So you have all these psukim. It says this. You can actually learn out from here that kol karbanam. What does it mean when it comes to all karbanos that the din is the same? That's even when it comes to the oil, the mitzayra, that the leftover oil is given over to the kohanim. Why would you think not? How is it any different than a mincha? Because you would think the pasuk says minha eish kasav rachmana kamashmon. So you would think it's only something which is actually put on fire. Lafuki, when it comes to oil, which is not. No, that's also distributed and given to the kohanim. L'chol minchasam. What does it mean? Every mincha is given to the kohen. We already mentioned a whole list in our Mishnah. So Rambos minchas oimer minchas kanais. So when it comes to even these mincha offerings, still also they're given to the kohanim. Why would you think not? Because why does the kohen get to eat it? Because there's an element of kapara when it comes to the different mincha offerings. V'hai lahater koasya. The reason why you bring minchas oimer is to mater on the second day of Pesach. Now all of a sudden all the new grains can be eaten, and the minchas kanais is so she can go back to her husband. There's nothing to do with kapara. So maybe the kohen would not eat. Kamashman. And again, it's also it's coming to just levire what happened with this woman. Kamashman. What is that coming to include? That even a chatas oif is given over the leftovers to the kohen. That since you don't do shchita, okay, there's this process of malika, but maybe the kohanim shouldn't eat it. So when it says an asham is even an asham nazir and asham mitzvah, why not? Why do you think not? So asham mitzvah it already says it explicitly. Kikachatas asham. Hula kohen. It says explicitly it goes to the kohen. El rambos asham nazir ka asham mitzvah. You would think that we're talking about an Asham Nazir, so maybe it doesn't go to the Kohen because the whole purpose of the Asham Nazir is just lahachshir, but it's not coming, as Rashi says, Leicho Oleha Naziros Tahira Bo'yehe Nechol, right? It's that his Nazir should be Chal. Okay. So, Kamashmon. Okay, let's slow down for a second. Question 3. Zeyeh L'cha Mikodesh Kadashim and Aish Kol Karbanam Chol Minchasam Chol Chatasam Manas Sarab. What it means that all mincha, all chatos. We asked for those two. So when it comes to every mincha, it's coming to a minchas oim minchas kanais. Even though you would think that maybe the kohanim don't eat from it because minchas oim is just a matir chadash, and minchas kanais is in order to levire whether the woman, in fact, when she secluded herself when the man was wrong, right? She in fact committed some form of ish. L'chol is the bird in which Malik was done. You would think it's the veil, therefore the kohanim would not be able to eat it. Okay. All right, let's go slow and let's see, maybe there's another question over here. Let's see. All right, let's keep moving. So, fine. So we end up saying it's coming to teach us by the Ashim that's Ashim Nazir. So Asher Yashivu, when the pasuk says Asher Yashivu, Ze Gezel Hager. So says Rashi, it says regarding Ha'asham, Ha'moishav Hashem L'Koyin. Now when it comes to the din of Gezel Hager, that the leftovers of the Koyin, the Gemara Baba Kama says they're talking about a person who steals a Gezel Hager, you steal from a Ger. Okay. So, in that case as well, the din is that the kohanim will eat it. Okay. Let's see this Rashi. Im ein ish goyel. If a person does not have any people to redeem, ha'asher moshev ha'koyin. So, what does that mean? So it goes to the koyin. Zeh Hakaren she'im gazel seger. Let's say you stole from him umeis seger, and then he died, and he has no relatives. Roitzel lahachser gazel. You want to return the stolen object. The enul yarshim. He has no heirs. Yachseren el kohanim. Give it to the kohanim. V'yavi carbon osham al hashvur shekafar v'nishbeloi. You should bring a carbon. Okay. Anyway, so the kohanim would partake of that. That's what it means by gezel ger. Okay, fine. So that is again zeg gezel ger. L'cha yeh l'vanecha shlo shalcha yeh l'vanecha to you and to your children. Efilu l'kadesh b'yis isha, which means that the kohanim don't have to necessarily eat it. It means that they have complete ownership of it, and therefore they have the ability, if they want to be mekadosh a woman with it, it would be a good kedushin because it's like theirs. Omer Rav Huna, as we continue to ayin gimel amud beis. Shalmei ha'oivik kachavim. When it comes to the carbon shlomim of an akum, oilo shalmei ha'oivik kachavim oilos. We say that even though he designated to bring a carbon shlomim, it takes upon itself the status of an oilo, which therefore means it cannot be eaten, and that's basically the same thing when it comes to if they would bring a gift of a mincha. Also, it has the status of an oil, and therefore it's not eaten. Rather, it's burned. Iboy seima krav iboy svara. Iboy seima svara v'chachavim libul shemayim. The fact is Rashi kavanasahu shehei karbanaisav kol l'shemayim lo sheach lanu. His intention is to give it completely to the shemayim, and therefore it's considered like an oil. Iboy seima krav asher yakrivu Hashem l'oila. It says you should be makriv it to Hashem as an oila, kol the mekarbi oila lahavi. Basically means that every single time that they want to bring something, it's as an oil, and therefore it's not eaten. So Masav Rav Chamba Bar Guria, his nadev while b'shlomim. It says clearly that if he had the desire to give a shlomim, nasli Yisrael, so he can give it over to Yisrael. Yisrael oichlon, the Yisrael tak would eat it. Nasli kain and kain oichlon. Give it to the kohen. It says Rashi kohen shal Yisrael mechuyev shlomim. Let's say it was actually the yid had an obligation. Okay, let's slow down. So the answer is Amar Hachi Kaimer Al Menashi is Chaper Ben Yisrael Oichan. Al Menashi is Chaper Ben Kohen Oichan. So we're talking about a situation. Not that it's considered like a shlomim, it's not like an oil, and therefore it would be a kash on Rav Huna, but rather it's talking about a situation where the Yisrael actually had to bring a shlomim, and the oivik kachamim gave it in order for this yid to be able to have fulfilled his obligation. So then in that situation, the Yisrael would be zoich, and he'll be able to eat the basar. However, says Rashi, of another stam shlomim nehavi oil. But however, as we're going to say to what we said before, that it remains an oil when it comes to a typical situation of a chavim that wishes to give a shlomim. It really his intention was for it to be an oil, and therefore it's not eaten. Maser Rav Shizbi el menachos nikmatzais v'shirehen l'kohanim minachzav chavim. Our Mishnah clearly doesn't say that. Our Mishnah says that the mincha is given over to the kohanim, the leftovers, and therefore they can eat it. So Rav Yochanan Kasha, Rav Yosef Guli, Rav Akiva. It's actually a machlokas whether or not, in fact, the kohanim can eat it or it's completely burned. So how do we see that? The sanya ish matam ish ish Rabbi says of chachavim that just an akum is able to make a free will statement to bring a shlomim, and in fact, taka would be eaten by the kohanim. So they can bring an oil. Oil. I know that an akum could have an oil brought. Shomanayin Talmud Leimer Nidreihim. That it says this word Nidreihim, which includes any shlomim. So Taida Manayin, how to know that an akum can bring a Taida? Talmud Leimer Nidvaisam. Manan Rabbos Oifais, but Yain V'Lavaina V'Eitzim, that an akum can even bring these other things. That would be an acceptable gift. Talmud Leimer Nidreihim. L'chol nidreihim nidvasam l'chol nidvasam. So him kain matam oila. So why does it mention oila? In fact, it sounds like an akum can basically bring anything. So oila is pratla naziro. Stiver Rav Yosi Haglili. So Rav Yosi Haglili holds that the reason why it says oila is basically to say that if let's say he made a neder to be a nazir, his nazirus is not going to be chal, right? Because Rashi says sheyesh ba oila chatas shlomim, and that we say is excluded by the akum. Okay. However, an akum could bring other karbanos outside of an oila. Rabbi Kiva Omer Asher Yakrivu Hashem Oila Enli El Oila Bavad. You only can bring an oila, and therefore our Mishnah that is not like Rabbi Kiva is going to be Rabbi Yosef Glili that says that Taka the Kohanim could eat the mincha of an akum. However, not according to the sheet of Rabbi Kiva, he says that an akum can only have an oil. By prat l'zirus b'hacha. Nafka, is that true that according to Rabbi Yosef Glili, he excludes an akum from becoming a nazir from this pasuk? Mahasam nafka. We learn that from a different pasuk. Dabra b'nei Yisrael b'marta lehem ish ki afi lindor neder nezal hazer b'nei Yisrael noidun ve'eno kachavim noidun. We learn out from that pasuk. You're right. But if you only had that pasuk, havamina carbon hudol lacy, maybe they just can't bring a carbon. So maybe an akum could be a nazir. They just are excluded from the karbonos. Kamashmal, they're not shaykh to karbonos at all. Okay. All right. Kaman Ozla Haditnan. Who is this following brisa like? Oimer, or this Mishnah. So Oimer Rav Shimon Shiva Devarim Hiskinu Beistin. So the Beistin made 7 takanos. This is one of them. Let's say no chacham that sends a carbon oil from a faraway place, and he sends together with it libations. So he'll bring it. It can be brought from his own wine. The imlav, but if he doesn't, then karivin mishal tzibor. Then in fact we use the tzibor. So lema Rav Yosi Hagli Rabbi Kiva. Because Rabbi Kiva holds that the only thing that an akum can bring is an oila, which is clearly not this case. Now, feel him Rabbi Kiva. Oila v'chol chaverta. It doesn't mean when Rabbi Kiva said only an oila, that doesn't mean anything else. It means that and also what it comes with it. In other words, Rabbi Kiva will agree that the nesachim can also be brought, the libations that accompany the carbon. However, again, it's only an oil, nothing else, but he could still fit into this. So man tanul hada torbanan. Ezrach maybe nesachim. Only a yid can bring nesachim ve'eino v'chachamim maybe nesachim. So it sounds contradictory. The yachol lo tehel also to unan nesachim. You would think his oil does not require nesachim. Tell him kacha. So money. Lo Rabbi Yosef Glili Rabbi Kiva. So Rabbi Yosef Glili. It's according to Rabbi Yosef Glili ha'omer afil yain nami. He said that you can bring anything, right? You can bring levina, yain. So why would he say over here that he doesn't bring the sachem? Rabbi Kiva ha'omer oil in medech min aloi. Rabbi Kiva says only an oil and nothing else. So Ibo Yisem Rabbi Yosef Glili was Rabbi Kiva. Ibo Yisem Rabbi Yosef Glili samima hi yayin. So maybe he would remove the word wine in his category of things he can give, because maybe he's not allowed to do that. As we said before, that it includes the nesachim. Question 4. Minas Rabim Ish Seira, so it's Abachachavim, Kumanis Mai Medini Menachsib Oil Dafka, so it's a machlokas. According to Rabbi Yosef Glili, it's you can bring anything, maybe not Nesachim, it's question Yain, as we just saw, but he can bring everything else, anything except him being a Nazir. Rabbi Kiva says it's only an oil and maybe also Nesachim, but excludes other karbanos. Okay, let's look at question TA 22. So as we just saw, it's either telling to exclude Nazirus, or that an akum is only about to bring an oila and nothing else. That's TA 22. Okay. Let's see if there's any other questions over here. TB 23, again, man mismayis, I wrote nazir or kol karbonos chutz ma'oila. So that's correct. Ein gimel with bays. This is TB 25. And let's see, TC. Akam shenadu havi shlomim madinun. So l'chad ma'ne'amar akam yachal havi rak oilos v'lo karbonos acheros, so it becomes an oila. Or akum yachol havi shlomim v'rak lo naziros. I'm going to accept that. Okay, so that's TC 19, and that's connected to this. All right, and Lokasha Rabbi Yosef Glili Rabbi Akiva. Okay. All right, let's keep on moving. 2 dots. Rav Shimon Omer minchas chayte shekohanim v'chulu. So we already talked about this in our Mishnah, that when it comes to Rav Shimon, he says that even when it comes to minchas chayte, you do the kmitza, but you burn them separately. So it says the extra letter kid will be like the mincha. That he himself can bring it on his own. That's what it means. Again, and Rashi says, so this is specifically referring to that. And Rashi says, She'im chata, if he sinned, mincha, and he's able to bring a mincha, yakal hakriva, hu ba'atzmo. He can be his own carbon. Okay, that's what it's coming to tell you. He can bring his own carbon. Boy, you're telling me that this is telling you that he can bring his own carbon for the one, even though he sinned. Maybe it's coming to matir the minchas chayte, that the kohanim are allowed to eat it, which just like a mincha of Yisrael, which we know is not the case. So so maybe the only time the kohen doesn't eat a mincha of a kohen is only if it's a free will offering. Of a chavaso, like for example, a minchas chayte, which you have to bring nechelas, right? Maybe you do have to. The kohanim do eat, right? Maybe the kohen does eat. So Talmud Lemer v'haiso kohen kemincha makash chavaso and davasai mad davasai and nechelas. So af chavaso and nechelas. Just to know, it doesn't make any difference whether the mincha is something which is a free will or, in this case, an obligation. The kohanim never eat it. So Amram Shimon v'chi never v'haiso kohen kemincha. It doesn't say that. V'lo nemer ella kemincha ella lahakish. So instead, what is the proper connection? Ayin Daled Amud Aleph. Minchas chayte shel kohanim keminchas chayte shel Yisrael. Actually, what we're going to connect is the mincha of the kohen to the mincha of the Yisrael. Ma minchas chayte shel Yisrael nikmetzes, a minchas chayte shel kohanim nikmetzes, which is what way he holds, like in our Mishnah. That just like, of course, when it comes to mincha of Yisrael, so we do kmitza. So too when it comes to the kohen. So if that's the case, so ma minchas chayte shel kohanim nikmetzes v'yisrael nechalin. So minchas chayte shel kohanim nikmetzes v'yisrael nechalin. Right? Is that true? We know it's not true. So the kohen kimincha, the kohen kimincha. It'll be for the kohen regarding the kmitza. V'lo ishim kimincha. So it's not everything else, only this one aspect. And therefore, on one hand, it's like a regular mincha Yisrael in that there is a kmitza. However, it's not the same in that, of course, we will not allow it to be eaten because it's a mincha of a kohen. So that which we said before, that a kohen who sinned can bring his own minchas chayte, is that how we know? We learn it from that pasuk. We learn it from somewhere else. That a kohen can bring his own karbanos whenever he wants. So we already went out this din that the kohen can bring it any time any carbon, whenever he wants, basically. So then why do we need this other pasuk to tell us basically the same thing? Maybe the only time a kohen can bring his carbon whenever he wants is if that carbon is not something which he did because he sinned. Since he sinned, maybe we'll say that he's not allowed to bring his own carbon in that case. I'm going that out from another pasuk. So what do we learn out from this pasuk? That he could bring, right? He could bring his own carbon, right? He can bring the carbon for himself. So we already see this. Maybe that's only a din, it was b'shayga, but b'mezid lo kamash v'lon. B'mezid not. So b'mezid heichem ishkachas lo. After all, when it comes to, you only bring a chatas if it's a shaygig. Right? It says b'zadain shvua. Right? When it comes to the case of zadain shvua, in that situation, that is the mazid. Says Rashi, so maybe that's when he's allowed to bring. However, if it was b'mezid k'goyin heicha dehabi nami amazid k'goyin asham charufa, B'shmias koil or yakru ba'atzmo, maybe he can't bring it. Kamashmuan, that even there he can. Okay, we're gonna stop there. Let's see, maybe there's another question over here. Question 5, no. Question TA 23, no. TB 26, no. TC 20, no. Adkan.